Hi everyone, and welcome to the third of our English lessons, and it's the first of our grammar lessons. And we're going to go back to looking at using fronted adverbials, something that we need to do in our writing on a regular basis. Our focus, however, is going to be on ancient Egypt, and we're going to look at the god Anubis. So, first of all, what are fronted adverbials? Well, fronted adverbials are words, phrases, or clauses that are used like an adverb to modify or change a verb or clause, but they come at the front, at the beginning of a sentence, hence fronted, followed by a comma. So, an example one, manner. Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. That's our main clause. Okay, so holding their hand, comma, Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. So in this case here, the fronted adverbial is holding their hand, comma. It tells us how he guided them. The fronted adverbial comes at the beginning of the sentence and is followed by a comma before the main clause. Example two is a time fronted adverbial. So again, we'll go back to our sentence. Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. In the evening, comma, Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. The fronted adverbial is in the evening, followed by the comma. It tells us when he guided them, hence time. Fronted adverbial comes at the beginning of the sentence and is followed by the comma before the main clause. And number three, a place fronted adverbial, so where it happened. Again, we'll go back to our main sentence. Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. So in the temple, comma, Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. The fronted adverbial in this case is in the temple, followed by the comma, and it tells us where he guided them from. And number four is a frequency one, how often something happens. So again, go back to our core sentence. Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. So daily, comma, Anubis guided the dead into the afterlife. The fronted adverbial in this case is daily, followed by the comma, tells us how often, the frequency in which he guides them. So, going to watch a short video when it comes through, introducing you to the god Anubis. Like I said, when it comes through. There we go.
Anubis, the god with a jackal head, is a deity of the Egyptian mythology connected to life after death. The god is one of the most ancient Egyptian deities, and therefore his role changed as the centuries went by. Anubis was already considered the main deity linked to death and the underworld's god, but this role was transferred to the god Osiris. The jackal god was also considered the god of embalming and mummifications. In funeral rites, it was common to see a priest wearing a jackal mask during the mummification process. The god was also considered as the protector of tombs and cemeteries, therefore protecting the bodies of those who went to the underworld. Anubis is the son of the goddess Nephthys, wife of Seth. But his son was not born of the union with her husband, since Nephthys had been disguised as the goddess Isis, and so she mingled with Osiris. Seth, coming to terms with that act of disloyalty, plotted against Osiris, killing him and scattering his body parts throughout Egypt. After Isis gathered all the parts, Anubis helped the goddess during the god's funeral ritual. So Anubis transformed the body of Osiris into the first mummy. Anubis became the deity that led the spirit of the dead to the underworld, where the dead would be judged by a court presided over by Anubis. The god placed the deceased's heart in Osiris's scale and the feather of truth on the other side. If the heart was heavier than the feather, it indicated that it was full of wickedness. He was then delivered to Amet, a demonic creature known as the Heart Devourer. If the feather was heavier than the light heart of the soul of the righteous and good, Anubis would take the person to Osiris, and the deceased stepped into life after death. In the period of Greek rule over Egypt, the god Anubis was associated with Hermes, which in Greek mythology is also a deity that led souls to the underworld. This association gave rise to a deity called Hermanubis, which became popular during the period of Roman rule. Anubis is certainly one of the most popular divinities in Egyptian mythology, the god accountable to lead souls to the afterlife.
So, coming back to this is Anubis. Now, you've seen this before. So, Anubis was the god of embalming and the mummification ritual. It's believed he made the first mummy, Osiris. Anubis was the guide of the dead. He helped them to pass into the next life, the afterlife. It was said that Anubis would wait for you in the hall of the dead to wear your heart. If your heart was lighter than Mart's feather, you would live forever. If it was heavier, then your heart would be eaten by the demon Ammon. Anubis had the head of a jackal. So, he was a god of embalming. He invented the mummification process while saving Osiris. He's shown with the head of a jackal and the tail of a lion and human body. Sometimes he wore a golden necklace, had dark black skin. People would give their organs to Anubis as gifts. These organs would be stored in canopic jars. Embalmed Osiris after his death, so he created the first mummy, and he helped decide the fate of the dead. So, fronted adverbials. What we've got here are the different types of fronted adverbials that you can have. So we have got time-fronted adverbials such as afterwards, already, always, immediately, last month, now. You've got next, tomorrow. Frequency, how often something happens. So often, again, daily, weekly, fortnightly, yearly, sometimes, rarely. Place, above the clouds, below the sea, here, outside, over there, under the table. Manner, badly, slowly. It's how something's done, happily, awkwardly. And then the degree is to what level it's done. So almost unbelievably, much admired, nearly asleep. That means not fully asleep, but nearly asleep. Those kind of things. So task 1. Can you identify the type of fronted adverbial used? So, late at night, Lord Anubis gathered the souls of the dead. Silently, the jackal-headed god Anubis stood over the sarcophagus. In the tomb, Anubis summoned the souls of the dead. Pause now and decide whether each of those is a time, place, or manner fronted adverbial. Okay, so late at night, that's a time fronted adverbial. It tells you when it's done. Silently tells you the manner, how it was done. And in the tomb is a place fronted adverbial. It tells you where it is done. Task 2. Can you add a time, place, or manner fronted adverbial to this sentence? Don't forget your comma. So Anubis walked up to the scales of justice. Have a go at adding your own fronted adverbial. Off you go. So a few example answers. After sunset, Anubis walked up to the scales of justice. That would be a time one. In the afterlife, Anubis walked up to the scales of justice. That would be a place. And solemnly, Anubis walked up to the scales of justice. That would be a manner, how it happened. Have a go at your text. Thank you. Bye-bye.